Carrie Preston stars in the new CBS series Elsbeth. I'm David Buchanan with Gold Derby. Carrie, the last time we saw your character Elsbeth was in a final season episode of The Good Fight. Take us back to shooting that episode with Christine Baranski and Andre Brower. And did you know at the time that you were going to be asked to do a spinoff, or were you thinking this was, a final farewell to the character?
I certainly didn't know we were going to do a spinoff. I knew that over the years on The Good Wife and even in Good Fight, people had suggested that might be a good idea, to take Elsbeth and put her at the center of a show. But, you don't believe things until you're standing on set. And even then, you still I still don't believe it. And we've already shot an entire first season. Because we're just not used to, at least I'm not used to thinking that things like that dreams can actually come true. So I acted on the final season, but I also directed on the final season of The Good Fight. So I was there even as a director in the second to the last episode ever of the show. And that was a true honor because at you being a fan, I know that that show was extraordinary from top to bottom. I mean, Good Wife was also equally extraordinary, and then this kind of deepened it in a way that they didn't do as much in Good Wife, and so that was really wonderful to be a part of something like that at a really pivotal moment in our country and a pivotal moment in the show, and to be at the helm of that was pretty exciting. And then it wasn't until actually after it was over that Robert and Michelle finally wrote the script for Elsbeth. We were toying around with the idea in 2020 during the pandemic, when Robert and Michelle were rewatching episodes of Columbo, and they thought, hey, this is how we could make her like a detective, just take it out of the legal world completely. And but that I didn't really realize was gonna actually happen at that time.
Yeah, what was your reaction to hearing? I mean, certainly it's so exciting to hear that they want to spin off the character, and it was always such a highlight of those two series to see Elspeth come in. But when you heard that it was not going to be a legal show, it was going to be a totally different genre, take this incredible character and kind of pluck her out and put her into a new medium, new genre, I should say. Were you shocked? Like, what was the immediate reaction to thinking, oh, she's going to be a detective and solve murder mysteries every week?
I mean, I trust Robert and Michelle just completely and utterly. So if they had that in their head, then I knew I was in good hands. And then I remembered that when I first got offered the role of Elsbeth on the first season of The Good Wife, the way they described her was she's like a female Columbo. So even back then, they were thinking about her as this, unconventional, unorthodox person who, basically uses being underestimated to solve cases, or maybe not even uses it, but just that's happens to be her superpower that people don't see her coming, and therefore she's able to really dive in there and see things that other people don't see. So that was, I think, helpful, just remembering that, oh, they've had this in their brain way longer than I have. And when I read the pilot, it was perfect. It was like one of those perfect pilots I've ever read, and I was like, and I get to do it. It was extraordinary.
I love that the character is the same Elsbeth that we know and love. But I wonder, do you approach playing her differently now that she's in a slightly different setting? We're in New York when the other series were set in Chicago, even though they all shot in New York.
Yeah.
How does the new kind of, genre of the show change how you approach playing the character?
Well, because I get to be on screen and get to live inside of the skin of the character on a daily basis, I'm learning about her as I'm going along. Before I played her 19 times over 14 years. So that's not a lot, and there would be years sometimes that would go by before I would play her again. and I would have to do kind of like a quick remembering. And now, it's a little bit more settled in my body and my instincts. And that's a real gift. Um, and so I always really just try to, if I, if I want to, find a moment that's lighter or comedic thing, I always try to keep it grounded. I always try to keep it in what is Elsbeth trying to do? She's trying to solve this case, and so what tools is she using? And just let those things inform me. And I'm just such a I'm a theater trained person, so I'm a really big believer in what's on the page. If it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage, and I really believe that. And so I start with that and then build out from it.
Yeah, something else I love about these episodes that I've seen is we really, we hear so much about Elsbeth's roots. They're staying really true to the character and the kind of backstory we've seen over all these seasons,
Yeah.
including mentions to Elsbeth's son. We heard about her ex-husband again in the most
Yes.
recent episode, who we saw,
Yeah.
I think, in the Good Wife finale. Um,
Yes.
have you, when you read those little kind of nuggets in these scripts, have you gone back and like looked at your earlier scripts or rewatched those episodes to really remember? I mean, as you said, not a lot of appearances over these 14 or so years you've been playing
Yeah.
this character. How much of those moments did you remember, and did you go back and rewatch or reread to kind of ground yourself in her backstory?
I did a little bit before we started shooting the series. I went back and just did kind of little like spot checks, to remember, to see, actually, honestly, if I could steal anything from myself, from my 14-year-old years ago self, because I don't remember what I did. I don't remember the storylines. So it's almost like watching another person. Like, I'm like, oh, hello, baby Carrie. What did you do with that scene? Interesting choice. I'm going to steal that for current day Elsbeth. And so I found it to be helpful. I don't want to do that a lot. It gets you in your head, or at least me, watching yourself, it can be a little distracting, but it was helpful for those reasons, just to remember the little details about the character's past, and just, my physical work and the behavior and stuff like that, to make sure that the character is the same. Now look, all characters evolve. They all do. And in the case of television, you have different writers for each episode. So although you have a showrunner that oversees everything, you're seeing yourself also through different, um, kaleidoscopes, depending on who's writing it, and that makes it fun and gives you many dimensions. And like I said, I always trust them.
One thing that's common across all the different episodes is Elsbeth almost immediately kind of knows exactly who the murderer is somehow, right? She has a
Yeah,
really good gut instinct on something is not right here, and this is the person, that I'm honing in on. Uh,
yeah,
what do you attribute that incredible instinct to? You played her for so long, you know her
yeah.
so well. Why does she have such a great read on people?
Her brain works differently than other people in that I think she's able to hold a lot of detail and information at once. So I don't think she files things in the long-term memory. I think it all lives there. So she has this huge database. I like to think of it as like a Rolodex. And so she can, go through and find a thing that she hasn't looked at in 20, 30 years that's just been back there. So she has that ability. Her brain synapses fire very quickly, but simultaneously. So that's what makes it seem like she's spacey. That's what I think. We've never talked about this. This is just how I think about her. And so she's able to do that. She's just not like anybody else, and it's almost like a superpower, I think, her brain.
I think so too. You have two incredible new characters in this series with you. One is Officer Blanc, played by Cara Patterson, who you develop such an immediate rapport with her on screen. Your characters do as well. And there was a great scene a couple weeks back where, she's very honest with you and says, "I know something's going on, with your involvement in this department." And Elsbeth actually makes a choice to be totally transparent and honest. I
Yeah.
love that scene. I love the way you two played it.
Yeah.
What has it been like, establishing that dynamic, and why in that moment does Elsbeth choose to be just so honest and transparent when she could have gone so many different ways?
Yeah. I think what I love about Elsbeth is she's very positive. She's very vulnerable. She lets herself be vulnerable. She's not afraid to do that. I think that's a wonderful feature in especially any mentor situation, leadership situation. And I think she sees herself, since she's older than Kara's character, she's older than her. She's got more experience in, even though she's not a detective, she does understand how to see things, how to observe, how to put puzzle pieces together. And so I think at that moment, her her friendship with Kaya was more important than hiding what she's really there for. And also, maybe they could work on it together, and I think she reassures Kaya at the end of that scene by saying, we're going to find the truth. Let's concentrate on the truth. Because she really does believe in the truth. And especially now in this reinvention of herself as a detective in this world of New York, she, she defended a lot of shady people in the past very well and it was very successful at it. But I think that really hurt her soul a little bit when she would know that she was defending somebody who was doing something that was, um, you know, not that didn't line up with her values as a person, you know?
Yeah, that's come across in the few episodes. That's been mentioned a few times, and you always play that so beautifully that you can really see that she's, I wouldn't say ashamed of her past work, but wants to do something different, in
Yeah.
this reiteration of her career. Let's
Yeah.
talk about Wendell Pierce as Captain Wagner, who is so wonderful. The two of you are great together. And that dynamic is so tricky because you're really playing cat and mouse the whole
Yes.
season. There have been a few scenes that you've had together where, the truth and what's going on kind of bubbles up. And, the
Right.
last episode that we've all seen, is at that housewarming party.
Yes.
And Wagner just comes right out and says, I know what's going on, tries to deflect her maybe. What has it been like exploring that really complicated dynamic with him? Because it's integral to, the whole season, and we'll see how it, unfolds in season 2, but it's been so fun to watch you two, play together.
Yeah, well, Wendell Pierce is, one of our finest actors, and I still am so grateful that he said yes to this, to this show, that he wanted to be a part of this. And I mean, he'll say he's having the time of his life just like I am, just like Cara is. So, we're really in it together and have the same s- way of working, which is lovely. And Wendell and I are both uh we went to the same training program. We both went to Juilliard. He was there ahead of me. But there's something that's comforting about that, knowing you're kind of from the same source, and so working together with him is very much about just showing up and receiving the brilliance that he's giving me. And also a scene like that is always delicious to play because there's such conflict and there's such cost. It costs us both to have that conversation because we do ultimately care for each other. And so there's a lot there. And so we would do take after take and not knowing how they're going to edit it together, but giving, the director and the editors many nuances and subtleties to play in the final cut. Um, but I love those scenes with him. And Wendell has said that we're kind of like Mary Tyler Moore and Lou Grant, which I love as well. I like that parallel as well. But this, it gets really dramatic what we're dealing with together.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how it unfolds in the end of the season. Speaking of the incredible actors on this show, every week the guest performers are just incredible, an embarrassment of riches of folks that
Yeah.
you've had on the show. Gina
Yeah.
Gershon, Jesse Tyler Ferguson. Oh my God, so many fantastic people. Who do you think has been the biggest and most challenging adversary for Elsbeth out of everybody we've seen, this first season? Who posed
Right.
the biggest challenge to Elsbeth?
Right. I mean, they're all challenging to her, which is great. And Elsbeth, another thing, like I said, she's so positive. She is not afraid of a challenge. So much so that she's like gets herself alone with these people that she knows have murdered people because she's just after, the truth. I mean, they've all been challenging in different ways. Um, I mean, I feel like there was some genuinely and I want to always build them in moments of being scared. Um Certainly in the pilot with Stephen Moyer's character. But also I think with Gina Gershon's character. I mean, this is a person who knows how to kill you by injecting into your spleen, and you're in her doctor's office. So, you know what I mean? Things could easily happen there, and so I like those moments because it keeps you on your toes, and it also hopefully keeps the audience on their toes.
Incredibly. Before I let you go, Carrie, I have to ask you, as you said, you've been working with the Kings for, I guess, 14 seasons between The Good Wife, The Good Fight, and now Elsbeth. Your husband is on their incredible show Evil, which I
Yeah.
just adore as well. What
Yeah.
has the collaboration with them meant to you personally and professionally? I mean, it's been so rich on screen, and I imagine the relationship off screen is just as rich.
Yes, the two of them are an extraordinary example of what leadership should look like, and the way they work together, and marriage. Um, the way they work together is so complementary. Like they're two hands with the same body, so one hand is doing one thing, one hand's doing another, but it's part of the same body. And so that's inspiring. They're incredibly generous, but they're also very specific, which is great for all departments, from leaders. You want that. And they're also the fact that they created this show Elsbeth, but they passed the baton to Jonathan Tolins to run the show, who is someone they've worked with for a long time as well. They're very loyal to the people that they find they have a common creative language with. And that's also a gift and an inspiration.
Is there anything you can tease about season two? Do you know where it's heading? I'm sure you're not allowed to say much of anything, but can you say what you hope to see Elsbeth get into in the next season?
I don't know anything about it. I don't even think the writers have started up yet. I think that's happening maybe very soon. Um, and so I'm not really sure, but I know we're going to have twice as many episodes. So we're going to have twice as many opportunities to find out more about Elsbeth, to explore all kinds of uh, upper upper crust crimes, But I think and hope they'll kind of mess the structure up a tiny bit just to keep the audience guessing as well.
Carrie Preston, what a pleasure to spend some time with you today. Congratulations on Elsbeth season one. Thank you for talking to Gold Derby today.
It was my pleasure. Thanks. I could talk to you all day.